ಒತ್ತಾಯವನ್ನು ನಾವು ಸರ್ಕಾರಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ. ಸೊ ಆ ನಿಟ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಇವತ್ತು ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಆಗಿರುವಂಥ ಈ ಧರಣಿಯ ಮೊದಲ ದಿನ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಇವುಗಳನ್ನು ಮುಂದುವರಿಸಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಎಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೂ ಮುಂದುವರಿತದೋ ಅಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೂ ಕೂಡ ನಾವು ಬದ್ಧತೆಯಿಂದ ಪ್ರಾಮಾಣಿಕವಾಗಿ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ಒಂದು ಕಾರ್ಯಕರ್ತರಾಗಿ ನಮ್ಮ ತನು ಮನು ಧನವನ್ನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ. ನಾನೊಬ್ಬ ಕಲಾವಿದನಾಗಿ ಇಡೀ ರಾಜ್ಯದ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗೂ ದಲಿತ ಸಂಘಟನೆಯ ಮೂಲಕ ದಲಿತ ಸಂಘರ್ಷ ಸಮಿತಿಯ ವಿಚಾರಗಳನ್ನು ಮನ ಬಾಗಿಲಿಗೆ ಮುಟ್ಟಿಸುವ ಸಲುವಾಗಿ ರಾಜ್ಯಾದ್ಯಂತ ಓಡಾಡಿರುವಂಥ ನಾನು ಈ ಥರದೊಂದು ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕವಾದಂಥ ಜವಾಬ್ದಾರಿಯನ್ನು ನಾವು ಸಂಘಟನೆ ಮುಖಾಂತರನೇ ನಾವು ಅಂದರೆ ದಲಿತ ಸಂಘರ್ಷ ಸಮಿತಿಯ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ನಾವು ಹಲವಿಂದ ಇದನ್ನ ಒತ್ತಾಯ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ವಿಶೇಷವಾಗಿ 25-30 ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಹೋರಾಟದ ಫಲವಾಗಿ ಇವತ್ತು ನಮಗೊಂದು ಹಣ್ಣು ನಮಗೆ ಸಿಗುವಂತ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಇದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಕಳ್ಕೋಬಾರ್ದು. ಆ ಪೂರ್ಣ ಪ್ರಮಾಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ಹಕ್ಕನ್ನ ಪಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕೆ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಒಟ್ಟಾಗಿ ಸಣ್ಣ ಪುಟ್ಟ ಮನಸ್ತಾಪಗಳು ಇನ್ನೂ ಎಲ್ಲವೋ ಅದಿದ್ರೆ ಅವೆಲ್ಲ ಪಕ್ಕಕ್ಕಿಟ್ಟು ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು ತಗೋಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನಾನೊಬ್ಬ ಕಲಾವಿದನಾಗಿ ನನಗೆ ಒಬ್ಬ ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ಜವಾಬ್ದಾರಿ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಒಬ್ಬ ಕಲಾವಿದನಾಗಿ ಈ ಧರಣಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಪೂರ್ಣ ಪ್ರಮಾಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೀತಿಯಿಂದ ನಾನು ಇದನ್ನ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ನೀವು ಕೂಡ ಇನ್ನ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಎಲ್ಲ ಒಡನಾಡಿಗಳನ್ನ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮದಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಪ್ರೇರೇಪಿಸಬೇಕಾಗಿ ಮನವಿ ಕೂಡ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ಈ ನಾಡ ಮಣ್ಣಿನಲ್ಲಿ ತಮಟೆ ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲ ತಮಟೆ
ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ತುಮಕೂರು ಜಿಲ್ಲೆಯ ದಾಸನಪುರದಲ್ಲಿ ಚಿಕ್ಕ ತಿಮ್ಮಯ್ಯನೆಂಬ ನಮ್ಮಣ್ಣ ಬಲಿತಾನನ್ನು ಸಾಲದ ಮಾತಿಗಾಗಿ ಈ ನಮನ ಬಡಿದಾರಲ್ಲೋ ಈ ನಮನ ಬಡಿದಾರಲ್ಲೋ ಏಟು ತಿಂದು ನಂದ ದಲಿತ ಅವರಿಗೆ ದೂರು ಕೊಡಲು ಅವಮಾನವಾಯಿತೆಂದು ದೂತ ಒಡೆಯರು ಸೇರಿ ದಿವಸ ರಾತ್ರಿ ಕಲ್ಲು ನೀರು ಕರುಗು ಒಟ್ಟು ದಲಿತನ ಗುಡಿಸಲು ನುಗ್ಗಿ ನಾಯನಿಗೆ ಎಳೆದು ತಂದು ದರದರನೆ ಎಳೆದು ತಂದು ಅಲ್ಲೊಂದು ಕಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಕಿ ತುಂಡು ತುಂಡು ಮಾಡಿದರಲ್ಲೋ ರಕ್ತ ಚೆಲ್ಲಿದರಲ್ಲೋ ಗುಡಿಸಲಲ್ಲಿ ಬುದ್ಧಿ ಹಾಕಿ ಸುಟ್ಟು ಬೂದಿ ಮಾಡಿದರಲ್ಲೋ ಸುಟ್ಟು ಬೂದಿ ಮಾಡಿದರಲ್ಲೋ ಈ ಕರಾಳದಲ್ಲಿ ಮೋಡಗಳು ಚದುರಲು ನಿಂತು ಕಪ್ಪು ಬೆಕ್ಕಾಗಿದ್ರೆ ಮೂಡಲ ಸೀಮೆಯ ಹಬ್ಬಗಳಾಗಿದ್ರೆ ಗಾಳಿಯು ಸುಳಿಯದೆ ನಿಂತು ಬೂದಿ ತೂರಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನನ್ನ ಮನಸ್ಸು ನಗುತ್ತಿದ್ದಲ್ಲೋ ನನ್ನ ಮನಸ್ಸು ನಗುತ್ತಿದ್ದಲ್ಲೋ ಚಿಕ್ಕ ಕಮ್ಮಯ್ಯನ ಉಸಿರು ನನ್ನೊಂದಿಗೆ ಜಯಮ್ಮನಿಗೆ ಹಣೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕುಂಕುಮವಿಲ್ಲ ಕೈಯಲ್ಲಿ ಬಳೆಗಾರಿಲ್ಲ ಭೂಮಿಯ ತಬ್ಬಿಕೊಂಡವಳೆ ಆಕಾಶದ ಕವಿಕೊಂಡವಳೆ ಕನಸಿನ ಊರಿನೊಳಗೆ ಗಗನದಲ್ಲಿ ತಮಟೆ ಸತ್ತು ಊರಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಒಡೆಯಲ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಕೋಣದ ಮೆರವಣಿಗೆ ಮಾರಿಯ ಗೌರಿ ಮುಂದೆ ಕೋಣಕ್ಕೆ ಕೋಣಂಕಾಲು ಭೂಮಿಯು ಹುಡುಗಿದಂತಾಗಿ ಜಯಮ್ಮ ಎದ್ದಾಳಲ್ಲೋ ಮುಟ್ಟರಿಸಿ ನಿಂತಾಳಲ್ಲೋ ಜಯಮ್ಮ ಎದ್ದಾಳಲ್ಲೋ ಮುಟ್ಟರಿಸಿ ನಿಂತಾಳಲ್ಲೋ ಒಪ್ಪಾರೆ ಎರಿಯು ತಾಳಿಯ ನೆನೆದು ನೆನೆದು ತಲೆಯ ಬರಿಕೊಂಡು ಕಣ್ಣ ತಂಗಗಳ ಹಚ್ಚಿ ಗಂಡನ ಹುಡುಗು ಉಳ್ಳವರ ಕೂತು ಕರಗಿದ ಕಣ್ಣುಗಳ ಕಗ್ಗತ್ತಲಿಂದ ಸುಸ್ತಾಳೆ ಸುಟ್ಟು ಬೂದಿ ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ರುಂಗರ ಚಂಚಾಡುವಾಗ ನಮ್ಮ ರಕ್ತೈತೆ ರಕ್ತದ ಒಂದೊಂದು ಕಣವು ಅಣುವಾಗಿ ಸಿಡಿಯುತ್ತೈತೆ ಈ ನಾಡ ಮಣ್ಣಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಮಣ್ಣಾದ ನನ್ನ ಜನರು ಸಂಘಟಿತರಾಗಬೇಕು ದಲಿತ ಸಂಘ ಸೇರಿ ಹುಡುಗಾಗಬೇಕು ಸಿಡಿಲಾಗಿ ಸಿಡಿಯಾಗಬೇಕು ಸುರಿಮಳೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸುರಿಯುವಾಗ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಧ್ವನಿಯಾಗಬೇಕು ಸುರಿಮಳೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸುರಿಯುವಾಗ ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಧ್ವನಿಯಾಗಬೇಕು ಮಾನವಾಗಬೇಕು 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 ಜೈ 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 ಜೈ
ಸಲಾಂ. ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು ಚೋಳಿ ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ್ ಸರ್ಗೆ. ಈ ಒಂದು ಹೋರಾಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಮೈಸೂರಿನಿಂದ ನಾರಾಯಣ್ ಸರ್ ಅವರು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಸ್ವಾಗತ. ಹಾಗೇನೆ ಮೈಲಾರಪ್ಪ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು ನಗರ ದೊಡ್ಡಬಳ್ಳಾಪುರದವ್ರು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಕೊಡ್ತಾನೆ. ಹಾಗೇನೆ ಸಿರಿಗೌರಿ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಜಲಶಕ್ತಿಯಿಂದ ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಸ್ವಾಗತ. ಹಾಗೆಯೇ ಸಿದ್ಲಿಂಗಯ್ಯ ಸರ್ ಕಮಲಾನಗರ ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಅವ್ರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನ ಕೊಡ್ತಾನೆ. ದಯಮಾಡಿ ವೇದಿಕೆಗೆ ಬರಬೇಕು. ಹಾಗೇನೆ ಗಂಗಾಧರ್ ಹೆಣ್ಣೂರು ಇವರು ಕೂಡ ವೇದಿಕೆಗೆ ಬರಬೇಕು. ಹಾಗೇನೆ ಹಿರಿಯ ಹೋರಾಟಗಾರರು ಶಿವಲಿಂಗಂ ಸರ್ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ದಯಮಾಡಿ ವೇದಿಕೆಗೆ ಬರಬೇಕು ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಮನವಿಯನ್ನ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. ಇದೀಗ ಸಣ್ಣ ಮಾರಣ್ಣ ಸರ್ ಬುಡುಗ ಜಂಗಮ ಅಲೆಮಾರಿ ಸಮುದಾಯದ ಮುಖಂಡರು ದಯಮಾಡಿ ತಮ್ಮ ಮಾತುಗಳನ್ನ ಆಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊಳ್ತೇನೆ. ದಯಮಾಡಿ ದಯಮಾಡಿ ಯಾರು ಕೂಡ ಹೊರಡಬಾರ್ದು ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಮನವಿ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಇವರು ಮಾತುಗಳ ನಂತರ ಒಂದು ಊಟದ ವಿರಾಮ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಅದಾದ ನಂತರ ಮತ್ತೆ ಈ ಸಭೆ ಹೋರಾಟ ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಹಾಗೇನೆ ತಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಮುತ್ತುರಾಜ್ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ತಮ್ಮ ಬಳಿ ಒಂದು ನೋಟ್ ಬುಕ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ತಮ್ಮ ಮೊಬೈಲ್ ನಂಬರ್ಗಳನ್ನ, ವಾಟ್ಸ್ಆಪ್ ನಂಬರ್ಗಳನ್ನ ಬುಕ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ದಯಮಾಡಿ ಬರೀರಿ. ಮುಂದಿನ ದಿನಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಹೋರಾಟದ ಕುರಿತಂತೆ ನಿರಂತರವಾದಂತಹ ಸಂಪರ್ಕವನ್ನ ಸಾಧಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಅದು ಸಹಕಾರಿಯಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಇದೀಗ ಸನ್ಮಾನ ಸರ್ ಮಾತಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಮನವಿ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ.
ಮೊದಲನೇದಾಗಿ ಬಾಬಾ ಸಾಹೇಬ್ ಅಂಬೇಡ್ಕರ್ ಅನ್ನು ಮತ್ತು ಬಾಬು ಜಗಜೀವನ್ ರಾವ್ ಅವರನ್ನು, ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಕೃಷ್ಣಪ್ಪ ಅವರನ್ನು ನೆನೆಸುತ್ತಾ ವೇದಿಕೆ ಮೇಲೆ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಸಾಹಿತಿಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ಹಿರಿಯ ಹೋರಾಟಗಾರರು, ಬುದ್ಧಿಜೀವಿಗಳ ಅವರ ಪಾದಾರ ಬಿಂದುಗಳಿಗೆ ನಾನು ನಮಸ್ಕರಿಸುತ್ತಾ, ಮುಂಭಾಗದಲ್ಲಿರುವಂತಹ ನನ್ನ ಅಣ್ಣ ತಮ್ಮಂದರು ಮತ್ತು ಅಕ್ಕ ತಂಗಿಯರೇ, ಆತ್ಮೀಯ ಬಂಧುಗಳು, ಇವತ್ತು ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಹಲವಾರು ವರ್ಷಗಳಿಂದ ನಮ್ಮ ಪಾಲನ್ನು ನಮಗೆ ಕೊಡಿ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ಕಾರಗಳು ಬಂದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ನಾವು ಒಳ ಮೀಸಲಾತಿ ವರ್ಗೀಕರಣ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಂತೇಳಿ ಸುಮಾರು 30 ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಕಾಲ ನಮ್ಮ ದಲಿತ ನಾಯಕರು, ಹಿರಿಯ ಹೋರಾಟಗಾರರು ಲಾಠಿ ಏಟು ತಿಂದರು, ಬೂಟೆ ಏಟು ತಿಂದರು, 60 ಮೆರವಣಿಗೆ ಮಾಡಿದರು, ಕೇಸುಗಳನ್ನು ಹಾಕಿಕೊಂಡು ಮಕ್ಕಳ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಜೈಲಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ಕಾಲ ಕಳೆದು ಹಲವು ಪ್ರಾಣತಾಯಿಗಳು ಮಾಡಿದಂತಹ ಉದಾಹರಣೆಗಳಿದ್ದಾವೆ. ಇಂತಹ ಉದಾಹರಣೆಗಳ ಸಂಬಂಧದಲ್ಲಿ ಕಳೆದ ಚುನಾವಣೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾನ್ಯ ಮುಖ್ಯಮಂತ್ರಿಗಳು ಸಿದ್ದರಾಮಯ್ಯ ಸಾಹೇಬರು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಲೆಮಾರಿಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ಆದಿವಾಸಿಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ಬುಡಕಟ್ಟು ಸಮುದಾಯಗಳು ಎಲ್ಲ ನನ್ನ SC ST ಬಂಧುಗಳನ್ನು ಕರೆದು ಚಿತ್ರದುರ್ಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತು ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಸ್ವಾಮಿ, ನಾವೇ ನಮಗೇನಾದ್ರೂ ನೀವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಓಟ್ ಹಾಕಿ ನಮಗೆ ಕೇಳಿಸಿದ್ದು ನಿಜವಾದರೆ ಮೊದಲನೇ ಕ್ಯಾಬಿನೆಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಒಳ ಮೀಸಲಾತಿ ಜಾರಿ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಸನ್ಮಾನ್ಯ ಸಿದ್ದರಾಮಯ್ಯ ದೀನ ದಲಿತರ ಬಂಧುಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ಮುಖಂಡರುಗಳು ಮಾತು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ರು. ಅವತ್ತು ಸ್ವಾಮಿ, ಮಾನ್ಯ ಮುಖ್ಯಮಂತ್ರಿಗಳು ತಾವು ದೀನ ದಲಿತರು ಮತ್ತು ಅಲೆಮಾರಿಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ತಾವು ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ಹೋರಾಟದ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆಯಿಂದ ಬಂದಂತ ಮಾನ್ಯ ಮುಖ್ಯಮಂತ್ರಿಗಳು ತಾವು ಯಾಕ ಮೇಲನ್ನ ಸೇವಿಸ್ತಾರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಮಾನ್ಯ ಮುಖ್ಯಮಂತ್ರಿಗಳು ತಾವು ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ದೀನ ದಲಿತರ ಬಂಧುಗಳ ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಕೂಡ ಅಲೆಮಾರಿಗಳು ಸ್ವಾತಂತ್ರ್ಯ ಬಂದು ಶತಮಾನಗಳಿಂದ ನಾವು ಊರವರೆಗೆ ಟೆಂಟ್ ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಯಾರ್ದೋ ಜಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಗುಡಾರಗಳನ್ನು ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಯಾರ್ದೋ ಹಾಳುಬಿದ್ದ ಮಂಟಪಗಳಿಗೆ ಜೀವನ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇವತ್ತಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ನಮ್ಮ ಜಾತಿ ಪ್ರಮಾಣ ಪತ್ರ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ, ನಮ್ಮ ಮಕ್ಕಳ ವಿದ್ಯಾಭ್ಯಾಸ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ನಾವು ಭಿಕ್ಷೆ ಬೇಡುವಂತಹ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಹಿಡಿದು ಹೊರಹಾಕ್ತಂತ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ನಾಯಕರು, ನಮ್ಮ ಧ್ವನಿಯುಳ್ಳ ಸಮುದಾಯಗಳು ನಾವು ಹಸಿವಿನಿಂದ ಸಾಯುವಂತ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ನಾಯಕರಲ್ಲಿ ವೇದಿಕೆ ಮೇಲಿರುವಂತಹ ಬಂಧುಗಳು ನಮಗೆ ಅನ್ನ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಸಲುಹಿದ್ರು. ನಾವು ನಡೆದಾಡುವಂತ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೈ ಹಿಡಿದು ನಡೆಸಿದ್ರು. ನಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆಲೆ ನೀವು ಇದ್ದು, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಜೊತೆಲೆ ನಾವು ಇದ್ದೀವಿ, ನಿಮಗೆ ನ್ಯಾಯ ಕೊಡಿಸ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ತಲಾಂತರದಿಂದ ನಮ್ಮನ್ನ ಹಸಿವಿನಿಂದ ಕೂಡ ಊಟ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಸಲಿದಂತ ನಾಯಕರ ಜೊತೆಲಿ ನಾವಿದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಇವತ್ತು ಒಳ ಮೀಸಲಾತಿ ಜಾರಿ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಸುಪ್ರೀಂ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಆದೇಶ ಬಂದು ಅಂತ ಹೊರಸಾಯಿತು. ತಾವೇನು ಅವರವರ ಸಮುದಾಯದ ಅನುಗುಣವಾಗಿ ಜನಸಂಖ್ಯೆದ ಆಧಾರದ ಮೇಲೆ ನಾವು ನ್ಯಾಯ ಕೊಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಸನ್ಮಾನ್ಯ ನಿವೃತ್ತ ನ್ಯಾಯಮೂರ್ತಿಗಳು ನಾಗಮೋಹನ್ ದಾಸ್ ಅವರ ನೇಮಕ ಮಾಡಿ ವರದಿ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಿದ್ರು. 7ನೇ ತಾರೀಕು ವರದಿ ಬಂದ ಕೂಡಲೇ ನಾವು ನ್ಯಾಯ ಕೊಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತಂದು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಿ. ಇವತ್ತು ಯಾಕೋ ಏನೋ ಅದು ಹಿಂದೆ ಮುಂದೆ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರಿ, ಅದು ಮುಂದೆ ತಳ್ಳುವಂತ ಕೆಲಸ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿ ಎಲ್ಲೋ ಇದ್ದವರಿಗೂ ನೀವು ಆಗಲಾರ್ದನೆ ವೈಮನಸ್ಸನ್ನು ಉಂಟು ಮಾಡುವಂತ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರಿ. ಸಿದ್ದರಾಮಯ್ಯ ಸಾಹೇಬ್ರೆ, ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನು ನಾವು ನಂಬಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ನಾವು ತಾವಿರುವಂತ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲೋ ಅವರಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಗುಡಿಸಲಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ನಾವು ಓಟು ಕೇಳಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಮೊನ್ನೆ ಸಿದ್ದರಾಮಯ್ಯ ಸಾಹೇಬ್ರು ಬಂದ ಕೂಡಲೇ ನಮ್ಮ ಪಾಲು ನಿಮಗೆ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಒಳ ಮೀಸಲಾತಿ ಜಾರಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮೇಲೆ ಅಷ್ಟೊಂದು ವಿಶ್ವಾಸದಿಂದ ನಾವು ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಆದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮನ್ನ ಯಾಕೋ ರವಾಗಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವೋ, ಇಲ್ಲ ಯಾರೋ ಹಿರಿಯ ಸಚಿವರು ಹೇಳಿದ ಮಾತು ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೀವೋ, ಇಲ್ಲ ಮುಂದುವರೆದ ಸಮುದಾಯಗಳ ಮಾತು ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೀವೋ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ನಾವು ಸಣ್ಣ ಸಮುದಾಯಗಳು ಅಲೆಮಾರಿಗಳು ಇವತ್ತು ಬೀದಿಯಲ್ಲಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ನಮಗೆ ಆಯ್ತು, ನಮಗೆ 1% ಅನ್ನು ತಾವು 49 ಸಮುದಾಯಗಳು 1% ಅನ್ನು ನೀವು ಘೋಷಣೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಿ, ತಾವು ವರದಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದ ವರದಿ ನೋಡಿದೀವಿ. ಆದ್ರೂ ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ನಮ್ಮ ಅಣ್ಣನ ತಮ್ಮಂದ್ರ ಜೊತೆಲಿ ನಾವು ಇರ್ತೀವಿ. ನಮಗೆ 1% ಸಾಕು, ಕೂಡಲೇ ನಮಗೆ ಜಾರಿ ಮಾಡಿ ನಮಗೆ ನ್ಯಾಯ ಕೊಡುವಂತ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿ. ಇಲ್ಲಂದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಸಮುದಾಯಗಳು ಅಲೆಮಾರಿಗಳು ಇವತ್ತು ಅನ್ನ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ, ಊಟ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ, ಯಾವುದೇ ವಿದ್ಯಾಭ್ಯಾಸ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ನಾವು ಬೀದಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾಲ ಕಳಿತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. ನಮಗೆ ಭಿಕ್ಷೆ ಬೇಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಪರ್ಮಿಷನ್ ಕೊಡು, ನಾವು ಭಿಕ್ಷೆ ಬೇಡಿಕೊಂಡು ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ಬರು ನೀಡಿದಂತ ಎನ್ನಲೆಲ್ಲ ಊಟ ಮಾಡಿ ಬದುಕ್ತೀವಿ. ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಸಮಾಧಾನ ಇರಂಗಿದ್ರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಜಾರಿ ಮಾಡಬೇಡ, ಇಲ್ಲ ನಮಗೆ ನ್ಯಾಯ ಕೊಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಜಾರಿ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಂತೇಳಿ ಮುಂದಿನ ಏನು ನೀವು 17ನೇ ತಾರೀಕು ನಾವು ಜಾರಿ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. 17ನೇ ತಾರೀಕು ನಾವು ಸ್ಪೆಷಲ್ ಕ್ಯಾಬಿನೆಟ್ ಅನ್ನು ಕರೆದಿದ್ವಿ. ಈಗಾದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಜಾರಿ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಉಗ್ರ ಹೋರಾಟ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ನಾವು ಭಿಕ್ಷೆ ಬೇಡಿಕೊಂಡಾದ್ರೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಸಭೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತೀವಿ, ಅದೇ ಜೋಡಿ ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಭಿಕ್ಷೆ ಬೇಡಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿರ್ತೀವಿ. ನಾವು ಭಿಕ್ಷೆ ಬೇಡಕ್ಕಾಗ ನಮ್ಮ ಬಿಡಬಾರ್ದು, ಅಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ತಾಳ್ಮೆ ಕಾಯಬಾರ್ದು. ಆದಷ್ಟು ಬೇಗ ನಮ್ಮ ನಾಯಕರ ಬೇಡಿಕೆ ಈಡೇರಿಸಬೇಕಂತೇಳಿ ಮಾನ್ಯ ಸಿದ್ದರಾಮಯ್ಯ ಸಾಹೇಬರಿಗೆ ನಾನು ಕೈ ಮುಗಿದು ಕೈ ಜೋಡಿಸಿ ಮನವಿ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ನನಗೆ ಮಾತನಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಅವಕಾಶ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟಂತ ನಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲ ನಾಯಕರಿಗೆ ವಂದಿಸಿ ನನ್ನ ಮಾತನ್ನು ಮುಗಿಸ್ತೀನಿ. ಜೈ ಹಿಂದ್, ಜೈ ಭೀಮ್.
ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೋರಾಟದ ಬಂಧುಗಳೇ, ಇದೀಗ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಊಟಕ್ಕೆ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಹೊರಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ನಾವು ತಡ ಮಾಡೋದ್ ಬೇಡ, ಊಟಕ್ಕೆ ತೆರಳೋಣ. ಈಗೊಂದು ಸಣ್ಣ ಊಟದ ವಿರಾಮವನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ಮತ್ತೆ ಬಂದು ಸೇರ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ. ಇನ್ನು ಹಲವಾರು ಗಣ್ಯರು ಮಾತಾಡೋರಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಕೇಶವಮೂರ್ತಿ ಸರ್ ಮಾತಾಡೋದಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಮತ್ತೆ ದೊರೆರಾಜ್ ಸರ್ ಮಾತಾಡೋದಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಇನ್ನು ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಹಿರಿಯರಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಅವ್ರ ಮಾತುಗಳನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಕೇಳೋಣ. ದಯಮಾಡಿ ಆದಷ್ಟು ಬೇಗ ಊಟವನ್ನ ಮುಗಿಸಿ ಬಂದು ಸೇರ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ. ಅದಾದ ನಂತರ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹಿರಿಯ ಹೋರಾಟಗಾರರ ಸಭೆನೂ ಕೂಡ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಆ ಸಭೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಂದಿನ ನಮ್ಮ ಹೋರಾಟದ ರೂಪರೇಷೆ ಏನು ಅನ್ನೋದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆನೂ ಕೂಡ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಊಟ ಮುಗಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ದಯಮಾಡಿ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ವಾಪಸ್ ಬಂದು ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಸೇರ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. ಎಲ್ಲ ಹಿರಿಯ ಹೋರಾಟಗಾರರಿಗೆ ಊಟವನ್ನ ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಕೊಡ್ಲಾಗ್ತದೆ. ದಯಮಾಡಿ ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಕೂರ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಮನವಿಯನ್ನ ಮಾಡ್ತೇನೆ.
So you just mentioned that you want to learn Python. So do not learn Python in manual way in 2025 because learning Python in manual way will take you like 6 months of your time. On top of that, you will be ultra non-productive in Python because when you use AI inside your Python, when you use AI tools to do your Python coding, you will be saving upwards of 95% of your time while you're coding, while you're debugging, while you're building web apps, and while you're scraping as well, right? So for tackling this same problem, we found like 10 useful tools for day-to-day Python development and Python work. So we have developed a program which is like absolutely beginner friendly even if you have zero knowledge in Python, you can join this program. And in 30 days, you will be becoming pro of Python, that also using AI. You will be not becoming a Python developer, you will be becoming a 10x Python developer. And the best part, like we have democratized this program. So this 30-day program is just for rupees 199. Can you believe that?
Nervous?
No, sir. It's dandruff.
I can't see it. There's something not right.
It's dandruff only. It stays stuck.
Oh, I see. This is oily, sticky dandruff.
New Head and Shoulders with charcoal formula pulls out oil and dandruff so that oily, sticky dandruff doesn't come back.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Wire Wrap. I am Jahnavi Sen. It's been an eventful week in India's domestic politics and foreign policy landscape. Yesterday, Rahul Gandhi has said that the Election Commission is responsible for voter theft during the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. Meanwhile, the special intensive review of electoral rolls in Bihar has come to an end, but questions around it remain. The Donald Trump administration in the US has announced that Indian goods will be facing a 50% tariff in US markets. With me today to discuss all of this, I have Professor Manisha Priyam, who is a distinguished visiting fellow at Monash University, and Siddharth Vaidarajan, a founding editor at The Wire. Thank you both so much for joining me. Now, if we start with what happened yesterday. Now, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi has been saying for a few days now that he has evidence to show that there has been collusion between the Election Commission and the Bharatiya Janata Party and large-scale voter fraud in the electoral rolls. He earlier had planned a press conference that was postponed because of the death of Satyapal Malik, and yesterday when it happened, he presented a slideshow with images from the electoral rolls to buttress his claims. Now, he presented data particularly on one particular constituency in Karnataka, which is Mahadevapura, which is part of the Bengaluru Central Lok Sabha seat. This seat has 8 assembly segments, of which the Congress had won 7 in 2024, but lost Mahadevapura by 1,14,000 votes and so lost the entire seat. Now, I'm going to read this out to get the numbers correct, but Gandhi has said that 1,250 votes were stolen in this segment in 5 different ways. He said there were 11,965 duplicate voters, 40,009 voters with fake and invalid addresses, 10,452 bulk voters or single address voters, 4,132 voters with invalid photos, and 33,692 voters who misused Form 6, which is what is used to register new voters. Now, while the Congress has studied this particular constituency, and he said it has taken them 6 months to collate all of this, and Gandhi showed the pictures of the electoral rolls with the photos that were matching with the names that were the same in different constituencies and things like that, in different booths, he accused the EC of trying to thwart investigations of this kind by first refusing to provide voter rolls in machine-readable formats, and also by saying that CCTV footage from polling booths is deleted 45 days after the election takes place. Now, he has asked the EC to provide both of these things that he says are now evidence, these machine-readable voter rolls and the CCTV footage. Now, the EC has responded by saying that Gandhi's claims are misleading and that if he is to be taken seriously, he must make these claims under oath. Gandhi has said that what he says publicly is what he believes to be true, and there is no question of saying these things under oath. Now, what we saw yesterday was perhaps the most concrete demonstration of what leaders like Rahul Gandhi have been alleging in terms of discrepancies in the voter rolls. The documents he showed were the EC's official voter lists, and the EC hasn't said that these lists are wrong or false documents. So I want to start with you, Professor Priyam. What do you make of this entire situation? What should happen next in a democracy like India?
Certainly, without doubt, the Election Commission has to come clear, providing the same documents in machine-readable form, etc., providing the video footages. All of this is the responsibility of the Election Commission. Remember, if some of these claims were being made in the House of Parliament, you wouldn't be asking a member of Parliament or a minister to be doing so under halafnama or oath. So for the EC to be responding in this way and so quick seems like having shot back at something, but this does not go down well, is how I would like to begin with, absolutely clearly. If you want me to elaborate on something, I can do that, but the point is the EC has to immediately come up with some bundle, not just of facts, oh, these are right and these are wrong, but trying to explain the process itself. And, the citizens are waiting and watching. As of now, it's not an accusation. It's a body of knowledge that has been presented. It's a very unique moment in India's electoral history. Remember, before this, citizens of India have never been victims of having become data of this commission or that commission. Citizens don't have a voice. Those who can analyze data on this scale and have the capacity to do so, they can speak on their behalf. So voice is no longer a simple mechanism for robust democracies. Voice is mediated through robust data analysis. It can be done by those who have the capacity, those who entered the data in the first place, those who analyzed and categorized it. And in this case, the Election Commission, which is an autonomous constitutional body, needs to come up and explain what is it that it did or why it may have occurred. Remember, as academics, we know there can be 10% margins of error either on the side of the EC or on the side of Rahul Gandhi. Both of this we don't see as something that is very unusual, but it's very important for the Election Commission to speak. It has data, it has analyzing mechanisms, and it has voice. Citizens don't have that.
But the response we've seen so far seems to be not really headed in that direction, in which all they have said is that this is misleading and he doesn't believe himself, as opposed to saying that this is why he's wrong.
I mean, how can you be wrong if you don't believe yourself? Or, I mean, these are not mechanisms. There has been a charge of what we call in data sciences of an error of inclusion. And that error of inclusion sizes up to what percentage of the total electorate? It's a very significant charge that's being made. I'm not saying the EC needs to come, voter by voter, but if there is some explanation they have of what's gone wrong, except saying, oh, the man is wrong. So right now, something needs to be said from the side of the EC. From all sides, I've thought about it, even from the perspective of the EC, even from the point of view of neutrality with all political parties. Right now, to have a fair playing ground amongst political parties. You can say, oh, kal koi aur ye bol dega to hum kya karenge, vagera, vagera. I mean, those are for a later day. But in a situation where citizens themselves cannot prove that this is what happened at an aggregate level, this is a very important thing. I mean, if the EC cannot rebut this, they may say that, look, we are going to invite him to understand what he's done. And it's not a problem to invite people who are in the opposition to have a discussion on what do you think has gone wrong, etc. There are errors that happen. There is, I mean, I don't want to go back to the past. There used to be vote stuffing. There would be ballot ko utha ke kuan mein phek diya aur syahi dal diya vagera vagera. There were institutional mechanisms to deal with those errors. If there is a point of time in our democracy when all of this is being said, I like for the EVMs, it was said for the longest times, many people tried to scratch the back of EVMs at their own levels. You can see less of that noise right now. But if this comes up at such a scale, it has to be answered, cannot be brushed aside.
I think from a statistical point of view, if there was one lacuna or one gap in Rahul Gandhi's otherwise very persuasive reasoning, it is this, right? That he has established that you had a lakh plus kind of extra voters. And this lakh plus extra voters is very similar to the kind of margin with which the BJP won. And the leap of faith in Rahul Gandhi's presentation is that this entire chunk of 1 lakh plus people whose presence on the voter roll cannot be explained, that the entire vote that these guys, first of all, that all of them voted and that they voted for the BJP, right? That's the leap of faith that Rahul Gandhi was making. And I dare say that by its reaction, the Election Commission has sort of, conceded that argument, right? It's sort of, I would say there's a certain guilty conscience at play. If you look at the pretty rubbish kind of reaction we've seen from the Election Commission, right? What does it mean to say, submit something on oath? Evidence is put in the public domain. It discloses wrongdoing on a massive scale, or errors on a massive scale. As the public authority responsible for that data and for that process, safeguarding elections, you should look at that information which is in the public domain and say, okay, this discloses something that I need to address. It's like, let's say there's a road accident and the police are confused as to how this accident happened. And then a citizen, comes forward or puts a video in the public domain of, how a certain accident happened. The cops are not going to say, nahi, first you submit this video on oath, only then I will take it into consideration. Nobody operates like this, right? You operate like that only if you are you fear that what Rahul Gandhi is saying is, that he has actually identified something which you already knew about, right? So this say it on oath, the thing is crap. To the extent to which the election commission or UP, the chief election officer, tried to engage with the president, one took issue with one name. So, like, part of Rahul Gandhi's presentation was a Srivastav guy who had his name and epic number in, I think, 4 different polling booths, 2 in Bangalore and then in Lucknow and Varanasi and so on. And the UP CEO said, we've gone through the UP rolls and this chap's name is not present. And within a couple of hours, Mohammed Zubair of Alt News was able to debunk that. And he put in the public domain the epic, the voter list with this Srivastav guy very much there, right? So even when they've tried to cherry pick and rebut Rahul Gandhi by cherry picking individual names, they haven't managed to do that, right? So I think the EC has to come forward and say, we need to come up with an explanation as to how these guys got added. Maybe they were added, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I'm saying that there is a backstory to this which needs to come out. And I think for the EC to duck this, and I'm sorry to say for the kind of wider, Indian media to ignore this, and, for the BJP to simply brush this aside, all of this speaks of a guilty conscience. And as I said, that missing element in Rahul Gandhi's presentation, which is that how do we know that this chunk of voters who were added ended up voting for the BJP? I think the EC, by its behavior, the media, the compromised media, by its unwillingness to even discuss this, and the BJP with its sort of instant dismissal, is kind of helping Rahul Gandhi make his case. And I think that's what is pretty interesting here. And I don't think in a democracy the EC should be allowed to get away with simply saying that, unless you give it an oath, you have to investigate this.
Professor Prem, I wanted to ask you also about the kind of media portrayal that Siddharth was mentioning, that in English newspapers we saw it, but except for the Hindu, it was kind of low down on the front page. In Hindi newspapers, often it was barely covered at all, and also similarly on television. You were saying earlier how, information like this already is hard for people to come by. Now, when a bit of it is being released in the public domain, if that is also not really taken to the people other than on social media or through political parties directly trying to engage with the people, what does that mean for a democracy?
No, I mean, obviously this kind of a news, for example, evolving a counterfactual to what the election commission has said, but even more, it's important for us to even engage with what Rahul Gandhi is saying. For example, one of the points that he said, to have a leap of faith to, let me argue the counter to Rahul Gandhi. The BJP candidate even won in a few assembly segments. The leads were 30,000, etc. in some. So it was a give and take battle that was happening till Mahadevpura is opened up. So if the election commission comes clean, it's not necessary that it'll prove a case for or against. Yeah, this person has won quite a few of the elections in the past. Mr. Mohan has won quite a few of the elections in the past. But on the other side, since I see Bangalore Urban very closely, I can tell you that there are other reasons why, researchers have hypotheses. They would like to be nullified at the prove me wrong is what I live by. I don't have a truth in me. Now, what are the things that I'm thinking about, that why Mahadevpura? Because Mahadevpura has a large floating population, all the IT parks, etc. are all there. So you have a middle class in apartments, but you also have a captive underclass, which is floating in from here and there. So I'm not connecting anything, I'm not correlating, but data has a social life. And in this case, data has a political life. It's become partisan. If it has to lay out the fair grounds, and I'm not even a statistician, I'm only do ethnographies and qualitative research. For me to be able to come up to this and to be able to argue so much, it's requiring me a lot of brushing up on thinking through how large-scale data needs to be countered. But the fact is that as citizens, we feel powerless. We feel like bystanders, that somebody who knows how to do this, scan all of this, do mapping, do what is called a dedupe, forensics, etc. on every this thing, which means the simple act of voting now needs to pass through so many criminal procedure codes. Look at the fact that there may be large-scale voter apathy. कि ये तो अब अगले बार चले जाएंगे और मेरा फोटो कहीं खींच लिया तो मेरे ही पे कुछ बन जाएगा. So the job of the election commission that reaches out to people, does one-act plays, theatres, kai nukkad natak. I have connected puppet performers, and they do it in, with RWAs or vagara vagara. And we've always said it's free and fair. And election day morning when I'm on television, we are shown visuals of how there are paintings here and this is a pink booth, etc. The Election Commission now needs to come up and say, that's one side. On the other side, I've been constantly saying this for a while, political parties need to have what are called people's statistical commissions. They don't need to listen to voices like ours that are talking still in terms of a little dense vocabulary, which is research oriented, which allows us to move the ground on abstract data. But how do people understand as to what's the kind of fault or error that's being heaped onto them as a new political reality without any fault of theirs? That's how I look at it. More powerlessness ensues. And I think for this political reason than any others, the EC needs to come out and make engaged citizenry out of us. Ultimately, we have a choice. Where we vote is our choice. It's a right we like to protect. But the EC at this point of time needs to come out and have new basis of engaging with the electorate and justifying to them that, look, your vote is protected. The overall structure that we create is now protected by our understanding of legitimate data. That's something they need to speak with. On oath, they need to say that, look, what we have is correct.
So, John, if I can just add one more point. The controversy which happened, a year and a half or 2 years ago, when the Ashoka University professor Sabyasachi, he published pretty arcane academic paper full of econometrics, very difficult for most people to understand, right? But with the hypothesis that why is it that when you look at marginal seats, right, seats won, with a fairly, small majority, why is it that the BJP tends to win a greater number of them than the parties it's against, right? So he noted that this was a kind of statistical anomaly that needed some kind of a political, social explanation. And, the kind of oversized hysteria and hysterical reaction that his paper generated suggests now, in the light of what Rahul Gandhi has presented with a great deal of granularity from this one constituency, that maybe Sabyasachi Das was onto something, right? So this, until that paper, all debates about the integrity of the electoral process were revolving around what I considered then and still consider now the red herring of the EVM, right? Ki EVM mein khel hai, EVM mein koi dhandli hai, machine mein koi gadbad hai, and the EC hasn't been fully transparent on the EVMs. That's a separate issue, but I think Sabyasachi hit on, was pointing to something that maybe the real play is happening in these marginal constituencies. Right? He of course was looking at minority. He had other elements in his analysis, but the idea that you can swing seats in your favor based on addition, and I think yesterday Rahul spoke about voter addition, but then he said we also have the phenomenon of deletions, suppression, voter suppression, all of which comes into play. But I think that this, I'm now, with the benefit of hindsight, can understand why the BJP went absolutely nuts. And the university,
paper that very few people would be reading.
And it would have been in the news for a day, and then everybody would have forgotten about it. But they leaned on the university leaned on him, they wanted the paper retracted, they wanted the title of the paper changed, all kinds of, unheard of reactions. For what? For a scholarly paper, right? But obviously there was a kernel of truth in his analysis, and now we can see when, one constituency's data is blown up in a very sort of, well-defined manner by in Rahul Gandhi's press conference, that there is something here. And I think all the more reason why the EC needs to come clean, and I think all the more reason why I would say, people who work on elections, who work with data, psephologists, political scientists, they need to speak about this and insist that the EC show a measure of transparency. Because at stake, Professor Prem is right. Like, if you have phantom voters, right, or voters who have a presence in multiple booths, multiple seats, this is something that could adversely affect any party, right? And unless Rahul is right, that all these guys are kind of BJP voters, right? And you know, by saying that it doesn't matter, the BJP is in a way conceding that point that, you know, aap kuch chupa rahe ho. If indeed you have phantom voters, then there is an equal chance that these phantom voters may vote for the Congress and not vote for the BJP. Yes, so you know, this is an issue which every stakeholder in the election, from political parties down to the electorate, has to you know, be bothered about, and the EC needs to come clean.
So, see, the thing is that any truth that or any counter that the EC will put, and I assume they will, it'll be more responsible, it'll be enriched by data, it'll have categories, it'll have explanation, and all of this leads to more understanding and engagement. So, in a democracy, we don't shy away from the next argument. It's important for us to offer that argument. And right now, it's a turn of the EC, definitely.
I think speaking of how the EC is and perhaps should be engaging with the citizenry leads us right to our second topic, which is the special intensive revision of electoral rolls, which has taken place in Bihar. Now, the Election Commission has declared that this has been a very successful exercise and said that 64 lakh voters have been struck off the voter list. Of these, 22 lakh are people who have passed away, 7 lakh are those who were registered in more than one place, and 35 lakh are those who have either permanently migrated or could not be traced. Now, it is this last category that has created some fear in the opposition and among people who are watching this process. A special summary revision was carried out in Bihar in just January this year, and according to the Reporters Collective, that found only 1.91 lakh voters who had migrated. So the fact that they have added to this people who could not be traced is what has created some confusion. Now, in addition to this, the EC has said that it has not received the forms of about 1.2 lakh voters, and these people are going to be left out of the draft electoral roll. And unless they file a fresh application to be registered as a new voter or file an objection to this list before the 1st of September, they could be disenfranchised in the upcoming assembly elections. Now, a lot of the fear around this is also that this will happen among people who are already poor and marginalized. Our colleague Shravasti Dasgupta has done an article showing that some of the poorest and most flood-prone districts are the ones showing the highest exclusion rates. And 4 of the 10 districts with the highest exclusion rates are also among the 10 worst multidimensionally poor districts according to the Niti Aayog, which are Purnia, Kishanganj, Sitamarhi and Saharsa. Now, 3 of these districts also have a large Muslim population. Now, other reports have also said things like there are about 20 lakh new voters who should have made it onto this list but haven't done. Perhaps that will be a process that the EC wants to conduct later, but given how close the elections are at this point, all of these are things that have created concern. Now, from the time that it was announced, there have been questions around this whole exercise. A big one has been around the timing. And should it have been conducted so soon to elections in November, or is it the kind of process that needs maybe a year or even more than that to be done thoroughly? Another has been around methodology. Are block level authorities able to really visit so many people, give them 2 copies of the form, make sure it's filled correctly, collect these documents from them? Another is whether this election commission should be an arbiter of citizenship. And then there are these fears of mass disenfranchisement. Siddharth, if you'd like to start us off on your big picture view of what's been happening.
So I would say I'll start by what I said earlier on Rahul Gandhi's, the 3 categories that he mentioned, right? So additional or phantom voters is one form of tilting the electoral battlefield. Then you have voter deletions, and then you have suppression of voters. So voter deletion refers to the removal of names, removal of bona fide voters from the electoral rolls. And voter suppression would be when you have somebody still on the electoral rolls who is unable to cast her or his vote. And we saw examples of this in the 2024 Lok Sabha election from Uttar Pradesh, and we've seen it elsewhere from time to time. I think the SIR is an exercise that is officially intended to delete names that should not be on the rolls, right? And now, in a democracy, there's no reason why one should object to that. After all, even Rahul Gandhi's exercise of pointing to 104,000 or whatever thousand people, if there were an SIR conducted in Karnataka, one would hope that these names would be kicked off, right? But you don't need to do an elaborate exercise where you have block officers individually, you just have to look and see Har Kirat Singh Dang appears in 4 places. And so there is a problem here, right? In one constituency, how can he be in 4 booths? So the EC has not done that kind of exercise, simple deduplication. Instead, it's trying to, repopulate the voting list from scratch, as far as voters beyond a certain cutoff date are concerned, right? And it's madness. It's madness because in this country, the default, India consciously chose to not have a system where citizens are required to enroll, unlike, say, in the United States. And part of the reason why you have historically low voter turnout, and if you look at the manner in which voter turnouts were managed, this is a clear way to ensure that poorer people, African Americans, and when women got the vote, women wouldn't vote because there was a fear that they would vote against authority, right? Against the establishment. So India chose that the people have an inherent right to vote. It's the EC's duty to ensure that they are able to cast their vote. Instead, you're having this equation flipped around where the EC says you must now enroll. And having said that, which I believe they should never have said, you are now creating all kinds of obstacles for that enrollment process by demanding documents that people may or may not have. And even when people have voter ID cards or other cards, you're saying this is going to be accepted, not accepted. And there's a high level of discretion, right? So given the backstory of the way in which the Election Commission has behaved, and I think, so far in our discussion, we have taken the EC and the EC's role as a constitutional body at face value. We've said, yes, it's a constitutionally empowered body, and we've assumed it to be impartial. Evidence suggests over the last 7-8 years, and particularly over the last 2 or 3 years, that even if you were to just look at 2024, you had the Prime Minister in the last Lok Sabha election make 100+ speeches where he directly vilified Muslims. All this nonsense about your Mangal Sutra will be taken and given to Muslims, your cows will be taken and given to Muslims, all kinds of targeted, I would say, hate speech that is it's illegal under Indian electoral law. It's illegal under even standard criminal law. But certainly the EC, as the policeman or the watchdog body for elections, should have called out and actually prevented Mr. Modi from making those kinds of speeches. They did nothing of the sort, right? And there's lots of other examples to show how the EC has kind of behaved a bit as a handmaiden for the ruling party. So against that backdrop, when you have an exercise of this kind launched at the 11th hour, with no real explanation as to why it has to be done now, and with all kinds of obstacles being placed in the way of particularly poorer voters. I was looking at data for the rate of illiteracy among older women from the scheduled caste or minority community. Like, it's much, much higher. We're talking of rates perhaps as high as 70% for some age groups. So, you're making it so much more difficult for voters from marginalized or poor backgrounds to exercise their rights as citizens. So I think the whole exercise was conceived badly, and the way it's been implemented, there's so much information now in the public domain from the grassroots level to suggest that this has not operated in a professional way as it ought to have. So I think that somewhere down the line, this whole process is going to end up with reduced. I mean, you're going to have voters, and I think the game, and I'm being very blunt here, the EC will find it very hard to dispel the impression that this whole exercise has been launched with a view to striking off from the rolls voters who would vote against the BJP/NDA.
Now we have petitions against this exercise currently being heard by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has repeatedly said that the EC should accept voter ID cards and Aadhaar cards as proof, which were not listed in the 11 documents that the EC had said they would accept. The EC has kind of dithered on this and said that they need an additional document as well. But the Supreme Court has also not stayed the process. So the draft electoral roll stands as it is, and claims are probably going to come in the next month, and we will see what the final roll is. But so far, Professor Priyam, what are you making of this exercise?
So allow me a moment to categorize or classify my arguments into one which is slightly based on a larger picture and draws from my understanding as a researcher, but a second part that draws from what the grounded experiences are. Remember, data has a life, it has a social life, it has a political life, and fortunately for once, ethnographic data with your ground to the ear matters very much. Now, I would begin from the ground to go back to the idea, who is responsible for that one poor person who has lost his home or her home in the Katav of the Ganga and live under blue tarpaulins? The Ganga's shifted its course, and this happened just as the SIR was set out, right? It's the same state, as I will tell you, that's handling bare lives. And of the things that the Bihar state gives to these people are not just the blue tarpaulin, गाय भैंस के खाने के लिए चारा भी दिया जाता है, ठीक है? So this life is unimaginable to those of us literally who sit here and talk about these things, but it is those bare lives that we are asking that in the midst of this, raise your hand and say, I count, right? Now, I'm going to leave that vignette with you, but come back to the broader argument. Mr. Rahul Gandhi, yesterday as a leader of the opposition, has given arguments backed by his data and his categorization of what are known as errors of inclusion, inflating the voter list, and he's categorized the types by which, subcategories by which this has happened. Remember, there's another one which is called the errors of exclusion. Okay, now the errors of exclusion, I see people in a huff ranting out saying so many were dead, so many this, so many that. Let's for the moment come down to that narrow argument on which the Supreme Court and the petitioner's life is hanging right now. The Supreme Court said, okay, fine, find us 15 people dead and come back to us. Now, just think of that. That observation is about dead people. Those dead people will not be walking for themselves or talking about themselves. Those who prepared the list must have done so on the basis of death certificates. The right hand of the state is making these electoral rolls. The left hand of the state has the death certificates. I doubt if my fellow villagers have death certificates of all those who died. I have to rack up, one disclosure, I am a Bihari. My mother and I actually checked up whether she has my dad's death certificate or I have it. She lives in our village and I live here. So the death certificates. Now, why I'm honing on to this point is that the Election Commission would have, classified people as dead based on either death certificates or the booth level workers who are gathering this data, having gone to homes and asking 3 लोगों से कि ये जिंदा है क्या नहीं है, और 3 लोगों ने अगर बताया हो कि हाँ नहीं जिंदा है तो मर गए हैं. So simply asking for even one category of data, that of the dead, please provide us whether dead by certificate or dead by others saying they are dead, and please categorize this by geography, whether it is in this geography, this assembly constituency, this booth, can lead to a people's level verification. A Gram Sabha can tell you that in my village, dead or not. So I think that will be a starting point. Even if the EC doesn't want to give us lots of data, but they're just compiling, I think that would be very important. I believe very much that even allowing for third-party verification at the entry level, because just entering the data into the computer, it's something that's, anybody can come and verify rather than do a CAPTCHA. In the villages, it's become a game कि तुम अपने मोबाइल फोन में ये डालो, फिर वो तुमसे कुछ पूछेगा, फिर तुम्हें पता चलेगा कि तुम्हारा नाम अंदर गया कि नहीं. So the sense that I get is that as of now, people haven't understood whether they are in or out, and they're kind of waiting and watching. However much we try and say, oh, this is a game of inclusion or exclusion, this is not their vocabulary, this is not their understanding. But what needs to be done right now by political parties or those civil society organizations who are on the ground is to ask for classification of data by further categories, so that disaggregated data visible within a legible geography is accessible by people. That will allow for some amount of understanding there. Second is, very often I have heard this argument that, the fear is Muslims will be excluded. simply by understanding the politics of the land, I can tell you that there are many more categories of political fear. It's not just, now some people have started saying women are excluded in a large number. Till yesterday, people told me, oh no, women are still the vote bank of Nitish Kumar, and they are now, वो टस से मस नहीं होंगी, वो निकलेंगी, वो उधर देंगी. Some people come and tell me, Pachphodna community, which is the extremely backward caste, वो टस से मस नहीं होंगे. What I understand very well as somebody who understands politics is Simanchal and Muslims are not just a category. I think there are places where the BJP had received a very strong challenge even in the last Lok Sabha elections. My bet would be on looking at what is called central Bihar, but actually the areas that lie to the south of Bihar. This is the area where the peasant movement has been very robust. This is the area where the Mahagathbandhan was able to do very well in the last elections. Remember, the sitting power minister and erstwhile home secretary of the government of India also lost his elections to Mr. Prasad. The fact is, we need to have not just clearer and more transparent data, we need to have more grounded studies of politics. Today I have reached a point where I simply do not care whether the newspaper is, I'm perhaps one of those who reads the newspaper in the middle or by the end of day, except some select newspapers that are on my phone. But the fact is, did anybody try and analyze why the BJP didn't do well on that patti? Now, it wasn't just R.K. Singh. Remember, there was a singer called Pawan Singh who the BJP gave a ticket to and then withdrew because there were these pictures of him that were circulating in the same belt. Now, he loses the Karakat seat. And Pawan Singh had been claiming, I'll set up a film city here. And there were people telling me, dekhega, sab youth uska divana ho jayega. They went, enjoyed the tamasha, the band baja. The person who wins there is Raja Ram Singh Kushwaha. Come to another seat in the city. And I'm talking to you of a geography that literally extends like this. It's called the Chittorgarh of Bihar, where traditionally the Thakurs have won since independence. One of those seats where the first rally of our Prime Minister was held. Now, Sushil Singh loses that election to another Kushwaha leader. So, you have to understand the granularity of politics to be able to understand what is shifting. Now, my political sense is that the BJP is also built its politics, remember, very strongly in all of eastern UP and large parts of Bihar on the back of a newly emerging Kushwaha caste. Samrat Chaudhary belongs to that caste. In Uttar Pradesh, some of the political leaders that the central leadership of the BJP backs, Mr. Amit Shah, especially, Keshav Prasad Maurya, etc., all Kushwaha leaders. But, the fact is that in the elections, the votes of the Kushwaha leaders and the victories of the Kushwaha leaders have been with the Mahagathbandhan. So I believe it's not just about, a minority angle. There may be, I don't know, why should I presume? Let me see the list. But I won't be able to make out any of this unless we get enough categories which are distinguished by geography, in this case, assembly constituencies, which are distinguished by gender within geographies, nested data, so to say. I also need data, especially for the dead, since that's where my life is hanging. If I were dead, then how would I speak out? That's the conundrum in which I live. And if I were dead, my rights would be protected. If my kith and kin could be told that I'm dead because of a death certificate, or I'm dead because 3 people said I'm dead. Now, why I'm insisting on this is, if 3 people said I'm dead and then I'm dead, then 3 people should say I'm included and I should be included. That's my counter argument. So the point is that we need to ask for categories of data that are relevant. Remember, just feeding in and getting data out is a thing called GIGO. Get it inside and get garbage out. You need to make me understand of why I am there, if I'm out, why I am out. And it's a form of legibility that needs to be explained to my community members.
I think absolutely. And the question of properly disaggregated, detailed data is one that also opposition parties have been raising and saying that's one of the reasons they haven't been able to raise claims is because they aren't able to read the data that's being provided in these large chunks.
I just stop you for 1 minute. You tell me something. Can you compare Mr. Tejasvi Yazov's press conference immediately after the electoral rolls were released with Mr. Rahul Gandhi's press conference? He comes up with his card. He is the leader of one of the largest political parties. I mean, the all of India looks to him as the secular anchor in the state of Bihar. What's the form of counter data that his party is able to present? Do they have the foot soldiers who will be able to collect all this? If they don't, then I'm sorry, in this age of data, etc., we cannot simply propound our theories or our knowledge of what research we know, etc. I mean, where are the foot soldiers? Have you put yourself in an exercise of knowledge related to politics? I think that matters right now.
And that's where the BJP has always excelled, right? Because the legendary sort of granularity of their whole electoral machinery is what has stood them in good stead. But I think this is something, what Professor Priyam is saying is that all opposition parties need to have boots on the ground, actually, that can verify and cross-verify.
I think just for reasons of time, though, I'm sure we could talk more about this. I'm going to move to the third topic for today, which is the US tariff announcement for India. Now, India was already facing a 25% tariff because of what Donald Trump is calling reciprocal rates because of India's own tariffs. But now the US administration has announced an additional 25% penalty on Indian goods because India continues to trade with Russia and import oil. Now, India has responded by saying that this is extremely unfortunate and that the Trump administration is putting this penalty on something that other countries are also engaging in for their own national interest, but somehow is only picking on India. Now, the US has said that this rate will be enforced 3 weeks from now, and unless something changes in the interim, because there are trade talks that are ongoing, though Donald Trump has made an offhand comment to the media that these talks are now on hold, though no official statement on this has been made otherwise. Now, at the moment, pharmaceuticals and smartphones are exempt from these tariffs, but there's a bunch of Indian labor-intensive industries like apparel, textiles, clothing, specifically, and also furniture, shrimp, and others that could see a big blow if this 50% tariff were to, in fact, go ahead. Now, I think it's impossible at this point to say what the Trump did not ask you about that. But the opposition has said that this latest additional 25% that brings the tariff to 50% is an attempt to arm twist India to agree to trade deal